Hello and welcome once again to the Teachers E-Symposium by the Oxford University Press, organized by the Professional Development Department. And my name is Abdul Haseeb. As I said in one of the earlier sessions, this entire setting feels a bit odd, a bit unusual. It feels that you're sending out your voice in the galaxy and not sure how it's being received at the opposite end of the screen. But at least in the times of this pandemic, we have the medium of online technology, which at least ensures that the teaching learning process is not entirely disrupted and not entirely discontinued. So grateful for that. And those of my viewers and participants on the other side of the screen, I'm hoping that this would be a learning experience for you. And if nothing else, then you would be hooked and engaged to the concepts and ideas that are getting shared over here and at least pondering or thinking loudly about them and hopefully even applying them in your classrooms when the time comes. So let's proceed forward. Let's see what we have over here. The theme for today is collaborative learning in social studies. Social studies is a very conventional subject across the globe, being taught in schools for since a lot many decades, quite cliched in many ways, um, and an amalgam of different disciplines, borrowing content from different disciplines. Um, to, for the purposes of this session, first and foremost, we need to situate social studies within the broader educational experience. We need to understand collaborative learning and apply it to social studies. Um, the word social in itself contains an indication that it should be taught in a different manner. The classroom should be wearing a different appearance, and it has to be inherently social. Of course, the medium that I'm currently employing is kind of a bit paradoxical to the entire learning that I present to you, but I don't think it could have been any better than this. So of course, we have to shun the one-way traffic, and we need to ensure that the classroom culture is changing. And going forward, um, the session will not be discretely divided according to these outcomes. For purposes of simplicity, I have uh, made them into bullet points, but of course, they are not being discussed as in this discrete manner. Rather, everything is integrated and they straddle along together for the rest of the session. To begin with, if my viewers and participants, I would like to invite your attention to the name itself, social studies. Um, Social studies is has been there for quite a lot of time, and if you were to think about it, um, it's been part of the school education um, for across the globe, in the US, in the UK, North, and different parts of the countries, different parts of the globe. Sorry, juggling with words, struggling with words. Um, and it has a special place in the wider scheme of school education. School education has a particular purpose to ensure that you're getting prepared for life, that you have a better outlook, that you have a refined sense of understanding of your own context in which you are to eventually contribute and have some impact. Social studies has a tremendously um, important function in this entire journey, and as John Dewey insisted that the function of history and geography is to enrich and liberate the more direct and personal contacts of life by furnishing their context, their background, and their outlook, I think it would be helpful if I were to take a spotlight or a laser pointer here. Yeah. To enrich and liberate the more direct and personal contacts of life by furnishing their context, background, and outlook. John Dewey, an American philosopher and a thinker on education, insists that its purpose is to ensure that our kids have a better sense of their context, to put it quite concisely. In our context, social studies is more or less about history and geography. Uh, Social studies is not just, uh, but it's not related to one discipline. It is in fact interdisciplinary. But in our context, it's also borrowing from economics. It's borrowing from anthropology because it talks about cultures. It borrows from sociology because it talks about society. It even talks about ethics and values. So a lot of philosophy is also coming over there. It's talking about human rights and citizenship. So it's quite interdisciplinary in that regard. And the purpose is to ensure that our kids have a better sense of understanding of their context and are able to contribute. So, social studies is not just an instrumental subject, just like mathematics or accounting or business studies. It is more about helping developing worldviews and perspectives. I think as teachers of social studies, this is a tremendously important vantage point that needs to be taken care of when we are teaching social studies. And this lens will entirely change or can change, potentially change our pedagogy, the approach, the perspective that we are taking when we open up a syllabus book of social studies or browsing through the pages of a book or organizing, looking for a sequence within that book. To begin with, and as the theme for today is collaborative learning. Social studies, the nature of the subject would require a different classroom culture, and as apart from the fact that a teacher needs to take a broader view of the subject or this interdisciplinary enterprise, second, after that, following that, the teacher should also think about what should be the classroom ethos, the culture. And it's very important that to realize that typically in our classrooms, social studies features a one-way traffic of information flow that the teacher speaks and the student listens. It's the jug and the mug analogy or the allegory. That the teacher, the jug, is filling up an empty vessel, the mug, and the recipients of that information are just passive, um, small-sized kids. But this ought not to be the case. A quote that I kind of made on my own. Not the idea is not entirely my own, but of course I'll give due credit where it's due. And but the words are mine, of course. If schools are to be the microcosms of the society that we envision, then a classroom is to be that arena of public discourse where that members of the society participate to co-construct that society. So if the school is to be a smaller version of the bigger society that we envision, if that if the school compound has to be the epitome or has to be representative of the society that we envision outside the four walls of the school compound, then within the school compound, the classroom is to be that space where our students or the public is participating in creating that society or co-constructing that society. And for that purpose, of course, the culture needs to be different. They need to be given opportunities to express views, opinions, bring in their inputs, give comments, ask questions, agree, disagree, so on and so forth. So a classroom has to be has to be buzzing with learning, has to be buzzing with questions and students wanting to participate. The students are earnest and eager to participate, just as is being shown in this small picture. Of course, this is not a Pakistani setting, as you can guess, rightfully so. So, a teacher should try to ensure that he or she is bringing everybody in the fold. The student, there's a student-student interaction, there's a teacher-student interaction. The teacher is facilitating the student-student interaction. But after some time, eventually, the ideal situation would be that the student are involved in a triangle or a quadrilateral of interaction and collaboration. And social studies is a fantastic opportunity to nurture these skills, to nurture these collaborative skills and communication skills and even critical thinking. So the first thing was that a key learning was that an instructor of social studies needs to be taking a bird's eye view to things and ensure that he or she is aware and cognizant of the place of social studies in the wider scheme of education for a student in his or her school journey. And secondly, the instructor needs to make an active effort to ensure that group work, collaborative work, and thinking aloud activities are taking place in groups, and the teacher needs to ensure that it's not just one-way traffic. The student inputs are also brought in the fold, and it's an inclusive classroom, by all means. But collaboration among students is not, and this cannot be a simple activity. It is not. It is not. So collaboration between students is often taken as something that would just happen, that would just occur. You make certain students sit together and you just say you need to do some group work, and automatically the germination of ideas takes place. That's not how it works. This is, I think, this is a big folly made on part of our teachers. There's a certain journey which needs to take place, or in fact needs to be facilitated by the teacher from making a team out of a group of students. So a group of students is not entirely a team where they're complementing each other. The students need to be brought there, and the collaboration needs to be churned over there by the teacher or facilitated by the teacher. For that purpose, if you were to think about it, I mean, the teacher needs to actively design and intelligently design the plan or the lesson in a manner where the collaboration takes place. For that purpose, I brought a few bullet points. First and foremost, the groups need to have certain targets, explicit targets. That means, of course, the instructions are quite explicitly communicated. But the groups itself need to be intelligently made. I mean, not every student sits with every student. I mean, you need to make sure that we have a right blend of students where they can complement each other and the inquiry or the agreement, disagreement can take place. And within the groups, we need to assign roles to students. Somebody is a speaker, somebody is a presenter, somebody is a note taker, somebody is a researcher, somebody is the whip who is ensuring that the students are on task. So further, you'll have to guide the group discussion. A group discussion does not happen by giving them a certain topic. You need to ensure that for the collaboration to take place and the wheel to move, it's important that the group discussion needs to be facilitated in a manner, and of course, peer review, peer feedback. I'll focus a bit more on group discussions. I think that's tremendously important. So, a group discussion, as the picture on the right shows, that I mean, everybody has different chips of the puzzle. The chips are different, but they come together and give us a coherent, consistent picture. Um, The instructor, first and foremost, needs to have very explicit instructions depending on his or her context, depending on his or her topic, the theme, and the expectations, of course. Each group member needs to be taught that they need to take turns to speak. So it's an activity of speaking, but also an activity of listening. And it's not just a biological activity, it's also about processing and thinking about what this other member or colleague is speaking or saying. So listening. And then, of course, posing questions. So that is where the exchange of ideas is taking place, or the exchange of ideas gets stirred. The one student is posing questions to another student, and of course, that starts exchange of dialogue, conversation, sharing opinions. That's part of it, and finally synthesizing to develop joint understandings because the instructor has given them clear instructions on what are the expectations and what are the group targets. So these group discussions need to be guided. Now, what we'll do is we'll go through a series of chapters from social studies, and we'll try to see what can happen over there to ensure that the collaborative learning is taking place. A topic that I've chosen from a book, Human Rights, uh, let's see what we can do over here. So human rights has become quite a lot in vogue, and a lot of our international organizations or local organizations have also interiorized the importance of this. So over here, talking of human rights, first and foremost, and we need to integrate everything. We need to first activate our classroom culture to ensure that our students are participating. We need to activate prior knowledge, what they know about human rights. We need to break it up, analyze it. I mean, who are the human beings? What categories? What are the classifications? And what are their rights? What are their responsibilities? Activating where they have heard the word, whether this is truth for their context or not, getting their opinions, getting the factual information. Building on that prior knowledge, we have, if you can see, the information for human rights coming from different philosophies. Over here, we have the name of Ashoka from the Indian civilization, with the Hindu civilization. Over here, we have the Bible and the Holy Quran, and over here we have a picture of Buddha, a statue of Buddha, Gautama Buddha, the founder of Buddhism. And over here we have Colosseum, ancient Rome, the theater for public discourse or the arena for public discourse, just like the Lyceum and the Colosseum. So, and going forward, we have different thinkers. Again, we have Confucius, we have Plato, we have Socrates, we have Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Hazrat Isa alayhi salam, Hazrat Musa alayhi salam. Different personalities and different vantage points looking at the same theme. Going forward, we have Magna Carta 1215 from the British uh, history, uh, written down by the barons uh, for the Lord Barons for the King or the Queen, His or Her Majesty. Um, and then we have further thinkers, John Locke, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and Voltaire. Different thinkers and a lot of information coming from these different vantage points. Important for the teacher to divide them into groups or think of how the discussion takes. Each group can get a thinker and they can come forward with their own research on that thinker, on his or her thoughts, bring that to the class. The instructor collates it and puts it together. There's an exchange of ideas. Remember, there's a classroom culture where the different groups should hopefully be teaming with ideas based on their homework and their research, and they should bring to the table or bring to the wall what they have done. An extra piece of thing can be that they prepare some kind of display or a visual or an illustration, and there's a gallery walk which is taking place or being facilitated by the instructor, question and answer by the student for the student. And an important theme related to social studies, important to understanding our context and improving our outlook, human rights. We have groups of students talking on that. And similarly, we have migration, and again taken from social studies. Let's see what we have over here. Migration, quite again, we can easily activate prior knowledge. We can activate information. We can gather information from our students, whether they immigrated, whether they know somebody who immigrated. So, of course, when we use these terms, a chance, a teachable opportunity to tell them what these words mean. But our own history, the history of Pakistan, 1947, we had millions of people who had to cross borders and move to Pakistan, or people from staying in what is now Pakistan, moving to India. So, an exchange of millions of people and migration taking place. We have a lot of migration taking place because of a lot of, um, I mean, the situation not being very certain in some parts of the country, and that is why people flowing down to the cities of Punjab and Sindh. We have a lot of migration taking place from the rural areas to the urban areas, whether that's in Sindh, Punjab, KP, or Balochistan. So, and we have a very interesting phenomena that is people going to the Gulf states, the oil states, and our families are directly getting affected positively or negatively because of that. Teacher can easily activate prior knowledge and begin to again divide them into groups, give them clear instructions. They can over here we have a picture of refugees in Peshawar. Over here we have important migrations taking place on a global level. Um, and that's also the case because of refugees and people seeking political asylum or asylum generally, minorities especially. Now, the instructor can clearly divide them into groups, have them again come up with a lot of information. They can agree, disagree. The teacher is overseeing the process, and ensuring that everybody is getting a fair chance to participate. Social, it's related to context, it's about different disciplines, but the students are getting involved as well. Finally, one more to go. It's about citizenship, rights, and values. If you can see again, I mean, we have a variety of vantage points coming over here. We have the cathedral, we have the Hindu worship, we have the Gurdwara of the Sikhs, and we have the place of Gautama Buddha, the founder of Buddhism. The Gautama in his pose, sitting under the Bodhi tree, hoping for moksha or nirvana. So, and we have some pictures on the right which can be easily related or can be found relatable by our students. The teacher needs to activate prior knowledge or connect it to their wider context and share with them what are the rights and response. So again, in all these contexts, in all these situations, the teacher is not to be the jug and the students are not to be the mug. It can be a guide by the side situation where the teacher is just ensuring that their information, their knowledge is brought on the table. They are given an opportunity to speak. They are given an opportunity to listen and think and share opinions, whether that's in groups or whether that's a whole class discussion. And finally, the teacher, after having an interactive classroom or facilitating a healthy group discussion, is collating, collecting all perspectives, and navigating the teaching learning process forward, the considering the learning outcomes for the class. All in all, the key learnings that I have for you is that first and foremost, we need to have very active classroom cultures, activating prior knowledge, connecting it to our immediate context, whether that's human rights, migration, citizenship, encouraging student inputs. And another key learning would be that we need to really plan for group work. Group work does not happen. In fact, we should be planning for teamwork. There's a difference between groups and teams. Groups are just a collection of people, and teams are a collection of people who are situated in complementary roles with complementary capabilities and polishing each other through their exchange of ideas. Planning for group work, we need to assign roles, we need to guide discussions and ensure that they're moving forward for joint productions. So, collaborative learning and social studies needs to be, again, it should not be something that's taken as a discrete block, which will happen and let us suppose will be activated after week 9. It should be integrated and embedded in our classrooms since day one. And the teacher needs to ensure that this culture gets created and the students are actually participating in uh, in the classroom day in day out, and that is when they would gradually start seizing opportunities for expression of creativity. So social studies, as we said, was reminded by John Dewey, tremendous potential to ensure that when the students are in their educational journey, they are gradually making sense of their context, their surroundings, their outlook is improving, and they're beginning to understand their own backgrounds as well, whether that's from the perspective of human rights, why they say what they say, or what's their vantage point, whether that's the perspective of migration from where they come or from where would they go, or citizenship situating themselves in this immediate surrounding. So a teacher needs to plan for this. I really, really hope that I mean, people on the opposite side of the screen did get some points to ponder, and some points which can be applied. I apply them when I teach, regardless of the stage or the age of my students or my participants. I'm pretty sure if we can think of social studies in much broader terms, and if we can empower our students to express their opinions, then automatically the classroom can get richer and more perspectives can flow in. I'm now open for questions and comments, and I'm hoping that I would be able to respond to as many questions and comments as possible. With that, I would like to I would like to uh, thank you all for attending, and I wish you all the best. And I'm hoping that you would enjoy the rest of the sessions. Thank you very much.